This all happened when I was 5 years old, and has been traumatizing me ever since. I have never told anyone about this until now. Up until I was in kindergarten, my mother used to put me in daycares or at our neighbors' houses so that she and dad could go to work. One summer, my mother asked this lady in our development to babysit me for the summer while she went to work. I don't know what possessed my mother to choose this lady. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was pure stupidity. Maybe it was a combination of both. But either way, my mother entrusted this lady with me for most of the day. This lady had no business being around children, let alone being responsible for them. I honestly believe that this lady was an alcoholic, mainly because she always looked sick and tired. Her eyes were always red, and her breath smelled like puke every time she talked. The worst thing, however, was that she was almost never around, basically leaving me unsupervised for several hours. The lady would only be there whenever my mum would drop me off or pick me up. Otherwise, the lady was locked up in her bedroom. She once had me clean her bedroom as punishment for breaking a few of her picture frames, which I didn't. I walked in her bedroom, only to find several glass bottles strewn all over the floor. The lady had 2 nieces who were staying with her for the summer. I don't remember their names, nor if they were sisters or cousins, but I do remember their ages. The younger niece was 8 years old, the older sister was around 11 years old. The nieces were the most horrible children that I have ever had the misfortune of meeting. The younger niece was a disgusting and rude brat. The older niece was a manipulative liar and a complete sadist. When I first met them, I was friendly with them. At first, they were friendly back, but things soon began to change. The older niece began bullying me first. The younger soon joined in. First, it was name-calling, then it was teasing, then it was stealing, then blaming things on me. In just a week, things had escalated to the point where both nieces began to physically abuse me. The younger niece liked to dump dirt and food on my head and pull on my hair. She, along with the older niece, once set my hair on fire. She also liked to steal my lunch, spit on food, pee on the floor, break stuff, and then blame it on me. The older niece liked to throw glass bottles at me. She once put broken glass in my cereal and almost tricked me into eating it. When I asked her why she did that, she said that she wanted to see what would happen if I ate it. The older niece also liked to push me into walls and furniture and drag me by my hair, just so that she could beat me up. I couldn't fight her off because she was much bigger than me. Plus, the younger niece would join in and beat me up as well. Every day, I came back home with bruises, cuts and stuff in my hair. My nights were spent trying to pick the glass out of my skin, bandaging my cuts, and washing out whatever stuff was thrown on my head that day. My parents never once noticed, not even when the bruises and cuts were on my face and arms. I also began to experience panic attacks at this point. Every morning, I would wake up and cry hysterically, knowing that I would have to go to that house and be stuck with the nieces all day long. It was only then that my mother finally noticed something was off. One morning, my mother asked why I hated going to that house. I told her about how the girls were beating me up and throwing stuff in my hair. I showed her my cuts and bruises, as well as burn marks from when they set my ponytail on fire. My mother took off work that day and drove to the house to confront the lady and her nieces. She showed the lady my bruises and cuts and demanded an explanation. The lady called her nieces and had them tell my mother their side of the story. The nieces claimed that I was hurting myself and breaking things to get them in trouble, that they didn't know why I hated them so much, and that they still wanted to be my friends. Believe it or not, my mother believed them and got angry at me for lying. So, she made me apologize to the nieces and the lady for my behavior. She then took me home and spanked me. From that day forward, my mother ignored whatever state I was in whenever she picked me up, no matter how bruised or cut up I was, because she assumed that I was doing it for attention. So, I continued to endure the endless abuse, and the nieces continued to get away with it all. I wanted to get away. I wanted to leave in any way that I could. I wanted my mother to believe me, but I knew I couldn't make her. The only thing that I could do was nothing. So, I began to zone out and basically became numb. Eventually, I got so numb that I practically felt nothing. By late summer, I had been subjected to 3 months of this. This was all around the time when the lady set up a swimming pool. One day, the lady decided to allow all 3 of us to use her swimming pool, probably so that we wouldn't bother her anymore. She asked my mother one morning if I would like to bring a bathing suit so that I could swim in her pool. My mother told the lady that I didn't know how to swim yet, so she wasn't sure if I should go. The lady assured my mother that she would supervise me and make sure that I stayed in the shallow end. So, the next day, Mum had me pack my bathing suit and brought me to the house. For once in a long time, I felt optimistic and happy. The thought of swimming in a pool excited me a bit, so I looked forward to it, even with the nieces involved. When I got there, the lady told me to change into my bathing suit and meet her and the nieces by the pool. When I got there, the lady said I had to listen to some rules before I went in. The lady told me to stay at the shallow end of the pool. She also told the girls that because I didn't know how to swim, I wasn't allowed near the deep end. She then went into the house to make a phone call and left, thus leaving me and the girls unattended. Once she was gone, the nieces walked to the deep end of the pool, but strangely didn't jump in. Instead, they sat on the edge of the pool. I went to the shallow end of the pool and played by myself. Surprisingly, they left me alone for about 15 minutes. I was splashing the water, blowing bubbles and just having a great time. For the first time in weeks, I smiled and laughed. I was having so much fun that I forgot that the nieces were still around. That is until I heard them call out my name. The nieces decided to talk me into going into the deep end. They kept saying that I was a big chicken for being afraid of going to the deep end of the pool, and that I was a big baby if I didn't go to their side of the pool. I decided to ignore them and continued playing. After about a few minutes of their teasing, I had enough and left the pool. I guess this didn't sit well with either of the girls, because as soon as I got out of the pool, the younger niece ran inside and locked me out. I ran to the glass door and pulled on it to try and get it open, while the younger niece stuck her tongue out at me from behind the glass. It was then when I felt 2 arms wrap around my head and shoulders. The older niece had come from behind and grabbed me. She started dragging me by my hair away from the door and towards the pool. The next thing I knew, I was tossed in the water. I panicked as soon as I realized that I was in the deep end of the pool. I tried desperately to stay above the water, but I couldn't. The few times I did, I heard the girls laughing at me. The older niece jumped in the pool and nearly landed on top of me. I felt her hands grab onto my head and pull it down. At one point, she was dragging me across the pool. I know this because my knees had scraped against the bottom of the pool. I was flailing about, desperately trying to fight her off and get above the water. It wasn't until I felt my hand hit something that the other girl finally let go of me. By that point, we were both in the shallow end of the pool. So, I managed to get my footing and get my head above water. I surfaced to hear the sounds of the lady yelling and the older niece howling in pain. The lady charged into the water and yanked me out of the pool. She pushed me into a chair and stared me down with her bloodshot eyes. "What the hell is wrong with you? I thought I told your stupid ass not to go to that side of the pool. Now look what you've done," she yelled. The lady then pointed at the older niece who had blood running down her nose and was still crying. Through coughs and tears, I tried to tell her that the older niece had thrown me into the pool, but the lady was not having any of it. She demanded that I apologize for hitting her niece in the face. I refused to do so and screamed, "No, I hate her." The lady soon got in my face and started yelling at me. She told me that I was a stupid girl for not listening to her rules, that I had been nothing but trouble for both her and her nieces, that my mother left me with her because she hated me. I yelled back at her and told her that I wasn't stupid and that her nieces were mean, that I hated them so much and I wished that they would die. The lady flew into a rage and slapped me across the face for saying that. I was too shocked to even cry at this point. The lady then took the opportunity to tell me how wrong I was about her nieces, what a horrible child I am. How dare I tattle on her nieces for my mistakes to get them in trouble? How dare I not listen to her directions about the pool? How dare I attack her nieces when they were trying to save me? How could I be so grateful when I owe my life to her nieces? How dare I claim that her nieces were bad children when they were really such sweet, innocent girls? That I would never be as good as her nieces, and that because of my behaviour, I would never be welcome at her house ever again. The lady then stormed into the house and called my mother to pick me up. When my mother got there, she was absolutely pissed. She immediately yelled at me for making her get in trouble with her boss for taking a day off to get me. She profusely apologized to the lady and her nieces and took me home. As soon as she got home, my mother spanked me and told my dad what had happened. My father came home fuming and lectured me about listening to people as well as not being a brat. I was then grounded for a month. I haven't been to that house since that incident, nor heard from that lady or her nieces. I drive past that house on my way to work and I get sick to my stomach every time I see it. I have never told my parents about what truly happened that day. I fear that they will simply dismiss it as the girls just being kids and me being a brat. I've had years to think about it and come up with an answer to why this had happened. And every time I think about it, this creeping feeling always pops in my head. The feeling that this was more than just an unintended accident by the girls. I can't help but feel that the older niece's plan of throwing me into the pool was on a far more sinister level than regular bullying. I honestly think that the older niece was trying to kill me, that the younger niece was acting as a lure for me and looking out for her, and that when the plan went wrong, the younger niece fetched the lady just so that she could get me in trouble for going in the deep end and hitting the older niece. But I would probably never know if that was the case, though it makes me shudder to think about what kind of adults these two girls have probably grown up to be. I am not a hateful person, but I sincerely hope that lady's liver has failed and that her nieces have turned on her, and that both of the nieces are rotting away in a prison cell or locked up in a mental institution. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe and comment. And stay tuned for more videos. Thanks a lot for watching. I had two nieces who were staying with her for the summer. I don't remember their names, nor if they were sisters or cousins, but I do remember their ages. The younger niece was 8 years old, the older sister was around 11 years old. The nieces were the most horrible children that I have ever had the misfortune of meeting. The younger niece was a disgusting and rude brat. The older niece was a manipulative liar and a complete sadist. When I first met them, I was friendly with them. At first, they were friendly back, but things soon began to change. The older niece began bullying me first. The younger soon joined in. First, it was name-calling. Then it was teasing. Then it was stealing. Then blaming things on me. In just a week, things had escalated to the point where both nieces began to physically abuse me. The younger niece liked to dump dirt and food on my head and pull on my hair. She, along with the older. The worst thing, however, was that she was almost never around, basically leaving me unsupervised for several hours. The lady would only be there whenever my mum would drop me off or pick me up. Otherwise, the lady was locked up in her bedroom. She once had me clean her bedroom as punishment for breaking a few of her picture frames, which I didn't. I walked in her bedroom, only to find several glass bottles strewn all over the floor. The lady. This all happened when I was 5 years old, and has been traumatizing me ever since. I have never told anyone about this until now. Up until I was in kindergarten, my mother used to put me in daycares or at her neighbors' houses so that she and dad could go to work. One summer, my mother asked this lady in our development to babysit me for the summer while she went to work. I don't know what possessed my mother to choose this lady. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was pure stupidity. Maybe it was a combination of both. But either way, my mother entrusted this lady with me for most of the day. This lady had no business being around children, let alone being responsible for them. I honestly believe that this lady was an alcoholic, mainly because she always looked sick and tired. Her eyes were always red, and her breath smelled like puke every time she talked.